And that actually
Right.
is a great segue to the next point that Hans makes, and his discussion with Danny Rensch, his private discussion, which he says that Danny Rensch told him that he knows he didn't cheat. So let's listen to that, and then we'll kind of
Which
see
time is that?
both. Yes, let's start at a minute 13 and 56 seconds.
1 sec. 1356. Okay.
Play.
.com has lost all credibility after this Chess.com report because there are so many logical fallacies. The worst thing about it all is you have Danny Rensch, who is the CEO of Chess.com, and he said to me on the call, he said, "We know you never cheated while streaming." It's a direct quote. I can hear that voice in my head 100 times. And he said this. And the worst part is that he knows he said this. And despite him saying this, and despite him knowingly lied, Chess.com, a multi-billion-dollar company, decided to destroy a 19-year-old kid's career because someone got upset. That is like the reality. In terms of or cheating, there's never been any doubt. There have never been any accusations. Not accusations. There's never been any evidence. It's been complete fabrication. CD has shown that. Just the has shown that. Every single expert has done that. So, in reality, I would hope that people wake up and stop sort of accusing me, and start to sort of give me the opportunities I deserve, so that I can, show people how good I am.
Okay, so basically saying that Danny told him that he knows he didn't cheat, basically calling the chess.com report, 50-page report, complete nonsense. And then Danny responds to that. He says, "We 100% stand by the findings in the Hans Niemann report. This includes both that we found no evidence of you cheating over the board, so that correlates with what Hans is saying, but also that you have cheated much more online than you continue to present. Can Reagan agreed with our conclusion in over 50 games, etc., etc. Regarding me saying that you did not cheat while streaming, that is a misrepresentation of the context around our conversation. After you admitted cheating, I had no desire to reveal which games or events we had found cheating in." And this is something that you mentioned as well, since you've kind of seen, let's say, under the curtain. Let's say how the cheating mechanism work. You said that perhaps it's not a good idea to show it to everybody because that's going to make it easier for people that want to overpass that to do so. What's your take on that?
Well, to be honest, I think it's probably not too difficult. Anyway, I mean, I do have a feeling that someone's a really strong player. They can get around it pretty easily. Uh, Although I could be wrong. Obviously, it's possible. And I've even spoken to them about like trying to see if like I'm playing some games against someone who knows, and they can determine if their algorithm actually detects if like one of us, or they offered to me to like use some assistance and see if I could fool their algorithm or if I get flagged. But I also don't want to do that. I never took them up on it because, well, first of all, I'm not like part of their cheat detection. I'm not. This is not my job, right? And I don't want to do things which I still feel would um, damage the integrity of my chess playing. So using engine while playing, even if it's totally agreed upon, and playing against someone who knows it and so on and so forth, still feels a little bit um, like breaking that integrity. I don't know, kind
It's
of
very
emotionally.
strange. Yeah, it's a very strange
It
feeling.
would feel weird to me. So anyway, that's besides the point. But this is a Hans and Chess.com are making two different claims here. Chess.com
He says, she says,
said,
basically.
well, they're both saying like they're both agreeing that there was cheating. I mean, there was never any dispute about that. But Hans is saying that it was long ago in the past in irrelevant games, and I think ended when he was 16, and didn't never and it never happened when he was streaming. I think this is one of his main points, which I don't really know why that's especially relevant, but whatever. He has clarified this. While chess.com does say it was happened when he was streaming, and also I think lists the events and said that it ended when he was 17, and says that it's more extensive than he claims, which again You just have to decide. Like from my point of view, there when Hans speaks about it, there does seem to be an element of minimizing it. That's my feeling about it. Like there seems to be a kind of like trying to downplay it a little bit. He is saying it was a serious mistake and I regret it and so on, and he admits to it. But there is that element of like trying to make it a little bit less serious than that's just my feeling. That
Again,
he's like
this
trying to
whole
downplay it a bit.
discussion seems to be just um, a situation in which Hans heard what he wanted to hear from Danny. Danny said and perhaps left a couple of details outside of that discussion because he wanted to protect his cheating mechanism, anti-cheating system. He said, she said, depending on which side you're on, basically you're going to draw your own conclusion in
Well, we
this
won't know
regard.
their internal conversations. We don't know what they said between
Exactly.
themselves.
Exactly.
But uh, for me, it's like chess.com clearly made mistakes in terms of handling it. They admitted, and it was also obvious to me at the time. It was like for when Hans was speaking about it 2 years ago, one of the major things was like, why am I being banned from this tournament? And I have to admit, I could never come up with a clear reason why. It just didn't. It was like, yeah, why is it happening now? I mean, these
This
are
is the
unrelated
Global Chess
events.
Championship. Yes.
Yeah, with a single cup in the global, it's just unrelated events. So unless you think that you have some new evidence that he's a threat to your tournament, which I don't think that they ever claimed that there was. They always said this happened when you were like 17. Um, but we already knew about that, right? So unless you have some new evidence, it doesn't make any sense to do what they did. So I just thought they handled it poorly. And also I think it backfired for them in the sense that they had to get tied up in all these lawsuits. We don't know the results of that, but um, a year of lawsuits and everything that went into that, even the lawyer costs, it couldn't have been too fun for them. So, but the other thing is like, if you cheated, you can't take the moral high ground. I mean, like you can say that what happened was unfair, but you can't say, um, and I think Hans does say this to some extent, like that he's kind of taking the moral high ground, like everyone else was in the wrong, but and everything was unfair, and like I didn't deserve this, but you do sort of bring it on yourself. I mean, like what this part makes sense to me that uh, if you ruin your reputation to this point, that you're like known to have cheated on at least two different occasions, right? Which he admitted to. Then uh, then this is going to have repercussions. It sort of makes, and I don't think like the way I would approach it is not saying like everything was unfair. I would be like, okay, I understand. I kind of I messed up, and now people don't trust me. Um, but still, you have to be fair within that realm of yeah, you don't trust me, but you can't just start saying you're cheating here and you're cheating there, and we can't invite you to anything anymore. That's that's not fair. So that's the approach I would have taken if I were Hans. But his approach has actually worked out. I think. I mean, he basically got everything he wanted. He got reinstated. He he generally speaking I think is viewed favorably now by the public. Although whatever that means, it's hard to the kind
He's
of
very
internet opinion.
divisive. He's very divisive. I mean, he has
Yeah,
a significant portion of the chess community on his side and a significant portion against him, basically, at this point.
but a lot of the stuff I see is like very much that he was the victim of this, which in some ways I agree, and in some ways I disagree. Like it feels like both sides. I don't want to be like both sides, but they there were definitely some mistakes from everyone involved. And that was my feeling.
Cool. All right, let's continue with the interview. Let's move on to another point. And again, we're jumping over a lot of things that have been said just because we don't really have the time right now to go through the whole interview step by step. I'm going to jump to minute 22 and 30 seconds. Fabi, whenever you're there, let me know, and I'm going to start
Okay, let's do it.
For me, I'm not put up to ask this
Go
question.
ahead.
If you could speak to Magnus on air, and let's say Danny, Magnus, and you had the chance to be on a call together and to have an honest conversation where all of the information was exposed, your perspective, Magnus's perspective, chess.com perspective, would you be comfortable was such a call? Do you feel like you have nothing to hide to such a degree that you would be comfortable talking to both of them on air? And are you interested in improving your relationship, or do you feel like the abuses that they've committed against you will harm your stance toward chess.com and Magnus for the rest of your life?
I'm gonna say this respectfully, Danya. I understand that
Please.
you were in you work for chess.com, and I don't want you to lose your job. But
Don't worry
the
about me.
unfortunate
Just speak
reality,
your mind.
the unfortunate reality is that these people did such heinous things to me that honestly, I see them not I don't see I see the relationship, and I see them as people. It's so irreconcilable that it is so beyond repair, because it was truly sick what they did. Imagine you are 19 years old and you have the greatest victory of your life, and you reach the top stage, and a multi-billion-dollar company, in combination with a company that's about to merge, and all the most powerful players accuse you of something you didn't do. And imagine it was impossible for you to prove your innocence, despite it being abundantly obvious. And imagine, Danya, like how you would feel if they continuously attacked you. So please think about it. Put yourself in my shoes and being a 19-year-old
Kramnik's
kid.
accusing me of cheating right now. As
Yes,
recently
but
as
does that affect your life?
No.
Do you understand that I was literally branded as a cheater in all of the news when I didn't cheat? Do you understand all of this anal beads, all of this? Do you understand that I like go outside and I have to live with this insane label of something that I didn't do? And
Yeah.
do you understand when you have reporters calling, your family, trying to get the latest scoop on you? You have reporters calling friends from 13 years old to try and find something. It's impossible for someone to comprehend the insanity of what they unleashed upon me without experiencing it yourself. But what it makes me realize is that there are truly sick, evil people in the world, and that has given me the ultimate faith that I must defeat them. And I've defeated them on the chessboard, and I'm going to continue to defeat them on the chessboard. And these people their head is so far up their ass that they could not admit any fault. Like, what is chess.com going to say? Oh yeah, we lied in our chess.com report. Are they going to admit that ever? That would come on. Or like they went so far and they lied so much that there's simply no way to even like talk, right? There's not even way. How do you even speak to someone who like just lies, blatantly lies, and then just uses all of their like resources and money and power to just destroy your life? Like,
Okay, so I think we kind of got the gist of it. Obviously, he believes chess.com, Magnus are sick and deluded people. I think he mentions Magnus in that regard as well. Obviously, to me, it just feels that he uses this personal vendetta right now to uses it as motivation, and perhaps there's people that psychologically can do that very well, and it gives them something to live for, something to work very hard for. And I think right now he basically needs this type of relationship that he built over the years with chess.com, with St. Louis Chess Club, with the entities that are blackballing him from the chess community and not giving him the opportunities that he deserves. I think he really needs that right now. But again, it's kind of like the same things that have been exposed and said 2 years ago. Finally, it's on the chess.com broadcast. We've seen it on the St. Louis Chess broadcast. We actually have some personal experiences where we've heard Hans talking these type of terms before as well. So it is nothing new, but it does seem like it fuels him, and this personal vendetta definitely seems to be working in his favor psychologically. What's your take on this sick and deluded people bit that Hans just gave us?
I think it's like overly dramatic, but of course this is he has maintained this sort of idea, yeah, that it's like him against the world and everyone's working against him, which I think we spoke a bit about it before, like what happened in terms of the global championship and everything that was, I think, very sketchy. But the idea that like everyone's working against him or that they're evil is some sort of fantasy in my mind. It's like, first of all, these are kind of normal people, and I think that like Danny, for example, admitted fault in his tweets, and a lot of them are willing to admit that there were mistakes that were made, and
And there's been a
and
lawsuit about it, which I'm sure tackled all of these questions and discussions. So I don't know. It just feels a little bit funny to me that we're hearing
like
this once again.
like my impression of it is that Magnus, he was very emotional at the time when he lost, and I think that his decision was really wrong, both from his point of view and from like a moral point of view, let's say. I don't think it helped him, but I think it was emotional, and I actually think that he was probably advised not to leave the tournament. And for example, the St. Louis Chess Club definitely didn't want this. And I think that in the aftermath of it, they were extremely fair to him, to Hans, that is, in terms of like Magnus himself was sanctioned for leaving the tournament. The chess club I think gave him his opportunity to say his part about it. And I think in the immediate aftermath of it, the St. Louis Chess Club had a fine relationship with Hans. Hans did nothing wrong in terms of that tournament, and Magnus did. That's clear, but that nobody has admitted fault and that they're all evil and working against him. I don't like have this impression whatsoever, and I think I have a really good idea of this one. Like I think I could speak um, with a lot of confidence that both he wasn't clued against to this extent, that he's imagining that this is like a huge conspiracy involving everyone. Absolutely not the case, and that everyone was at fault besides him, which, as we know, like yeah, when you have this reputation, then even though what Magnus did was absolutely not correct, it's not like this was some sort of evil thing because they're out to get Hans, right? This was because he had this like paranoid, perhaps, or emotional moment. Emotional for sure, and perhaps paranoid. Although I can't speak to Magnus's state of mind, but definitely he felt like something was wrong in that game, and there's no reason to feel that. But when you get in your mind that someone is a cheater, then it can turn into paranoia. That's my feeling. And I think that I'll just mention one thing, which is that there was a lot of talk beforehand. So I think even Hikaru mentions in his thing. He says like everyone was talking beforehand, and it got into Magnus's head, which I actually suspect that to be the case because I never thought of Hans as like a cheater before the tournament. I didn't know about this stuff.
You
Like
mean
I
a lot
hadn't.
of people were discussing behind closed doors
Yeah,
before they met at the Singfield Cup that Hans was in fact cheating?
yeah. No, so I didn't know that he had been banned. I had heard from I won't say the people who the people were, but I had heard suspicions about him. But I didn't know that it. I thought it was just suspicion because there's a lot of suspicion about a lot of people, and some of it is based on like you hear that they're banned, or some of it's based on absolutely nothing. Just you think that they're suspicious yourself. So I heard in that year in 2022, probably around May, um, someone say that they don't trust him. Basically, they think that he's cheating online. That was one thing. And then I heard, actually, I played him in the Bundesliga in 22. And at that event, someone came up to me during the game and, and said, "What do you think about these players?" So they didn't just mention, Hans, but also another player who I won't mention, um, and said, like, basically, what do you think about them? Like, I was like, what do you mean? And basically, the idea was they thought that these two people were both cheating online. So I was like, okay, I didn't really speak to it because I didn't have any reason. Like when I didn't know about Hans's chess. I played him in one game. So one game, not a weird game at all. And I had no reason to think. So I didn't know the behind the scenes that he had been banned when he was 12, right? For example. Um, but that I had heard this before when it happened during the Singfield Cup. It wasn't like a complete shock, but I hadn't like had it as much exposure as other people. That being said, I can imagine that Magnus had heard more stuff, and maybe this influenced his decision. Which I think that it was a very poor decision. It was bad from his point of view. It was bad from the tournament point of view, and I think it was bad for like all of chess because I don't think the major cheating scandal was a good thing for us. I think it was just bad for everyone, and so that was a major mistake. But to suggest that it was done out of evilness or that these people, as he says, are all working against him and he's the innocent one and everyone else is evil. It's a very black and white thing, which I don't think is the case. I don't think it's black and white. I think basically um, people made decisions emotionally and they were bad decisions and they negatively in fact affected him and themselves. And I think those people do regret those things, like Danny mentioned, and of course I don't know what Magnus thinks, but he probably also regrets um, what he was a part of what started. Now, I want to mention again, I don't think that they were the only ones who started it. I think Magnus was the first person to do something that started it, and then Chess.com was the second entity by banning him unfairly, in my view, from the global championship. And then Hans was the third by giving this really inflammatory interview rather than trying to understand and resolve things behind the scenes. Now, if he actually had done that, but it was too soon after. I don't think that he did. If he had actually done that, then I would retract that opinion. But under the assumption that he had not tried to resolve things, mediate things with chess.com, then I think that giving this really inflammatory interview set in motion the sequence of events that happened after that, which was that chess.com responded with their report, right, which was like 70-page thing, which Hans maintains is false in many ways, and chess.com maintains is true in every way. But again, I don't know. I don't know how true everything there is, and I don't know how false everything there is. But his interview definitely set in motion that. And then their chess.com report, which was probably a mistake, again, another mistake to publish, set off the lawsuit, which was probably a very good idea from Hans.
Cool. Yeah.
That's my view of every. I think everyone was making mistakes left and right, and you can't paint it as like a black and white thing.
Yes, it's a situation with a lot of moving parts, a lot of details that were more or less known. Most of these details and most of the things that he has discussed in this interview perhaps are new to some people, but these have been discussed in the past at length. So not that much new. Still, it does seem like it refreshes old memories, this interview. And yeah, I think we more or less covered the big parts of this interview. We will leave the interview in the description below. You can check it out for yourself.